The night before her wedding, Claire received a text from her fiancé. 11 words. No phone call. No explanation. Just, I can't do this. I'm sorry. Don't call me tonight. The dress was still hanging on the door. The flowers were being delivered at 9 in the morning. 160 people were showing up tomorrow. And the man she had given 3 years of her life to had just disappeared with 11 words. What she did next, with her last $60, a suitcase, and a stranger on a street corner, is a story nobody saw coming. Including her. She had $142 to her name. Her wedding had just been cancelled the night before. The dress was still in the bag. The ring was still on her finger. And instead of holding on to every dollar she had left, she stopped for a homeless man on a street corner and gave him 60 of them. Most people would call that foolish. What happened next will make you call it something else entirely. She was supposed to be walking down the aisle today. Instead, she was broke, alone, and sitting on a curb next to a homeless man she'd just handed her last $60 to. She thought she was helping someone who had nothing. She had absolutely no idea she was sitting next to one of the wealthiest men in the country, and that this moment, the worst of her entire life, was about to change everything. The night before her wedding, Claire Ashford sat on the edge of the bed in room 214 of the Riverside Inn and listened to the silence where her future used to be. The dress was hanging on the back of the closet door. Ivory silk. Beading around the collar. She'd had it adjusted 3 different times so it would fit just right. The shoes were still in their box on the chair. Low heels. Joshua was only a couple inches taller than her, and she never liked making him feel short. The florist had already said the white peonies would show up at 9 in the morning. Now none of that mattered. Her phone was on the nightstand, screen still on. The last message from Joshua Calloway sat there. Sent 47 minutes ago. She'd read it so many times the words barely looked real anymore. I can't do this. I'm sorry. I should have said something sooner. Don't call me tonight. That was it. No explanation. No phone call. No knock on the door. Just 11 words and a silence so complete it had weight. Claire did not cry immediately. She sat very still, the way people sit when they are waiting for their mind to catch up with what their body already knows. The air in the room smelled like the vanilla candle she had lit earlier, thinking it would calm her nerves before the wedding. Now the smell felt cruel. She had loved Joshua Calloway for 3 years. She had planned this wedding for 11 months. She had given up her apartment in Portland to move closer to his family in Denver. She had changed her career track, her circle, her daily rhythms, all of it arranged around the life they were supposed to begin tomorrow. And tomorrow had just been cancelled without an apology. Before we go any further into Claire's story, drop a comment and tell us where you're watching from right now. And if you're new to this channel and you believe that stories about dignity, resilience, and unexpected grace deserve to be told, hit that subscribe button. We tell stories here that stay with you. This is one of them. Let's go back to the beginning. Claire Ashford grew up in Boise, Idaho, the middle child of 3 daughters raised by a mother who worked 2 jobs and a father who was present enough to be remembered but absent enough to leave gaps that Claire spent her adult life quietly trying to fill. She was not someone who fell apart easily. That was the thing people always said about her, that Claire was steady. Grounded. The one you called when things went sideways, because she would already be thinking 3 steps ahead of the crisis. She had put herself through college on scholarships and part-time work. She had built a career as a mid-level project manager at an architecture firm in Portland, where she was known for staying late, remembering details, and never making promises she couldn't keep. She met Joshua Calloway at a mutual friend's birthday party when she was 29. He was tall, easy laughing, the kind of man who knew everyone in the room within an hour. He sold commercial real estate and was good at it, not because he was ruthless, but because he made people feel comfortable. He had a gift for that. On their 3rd date, Joshua told Claire she was the most grounded person he had ever met. He said it like a compliment. Claire took it as one. They dated for a year before he proposed. The proposal was simple: a hiking trail she loved, a ring she had never seen before but somehow felt right the moment it was on her finger. She said yes before he had finished the question. The engagement was supposed to be the easy part. It was not. Joshua's mother had opinions about the wedding that she expressed as suggestions but enforced as requirements. The venue changed twice. The guest list ballooned from 80 people to 160. The budget expanded in ways Claire hadn't planned for, and Joshua's contribution to the planning existed mostly in the form of nodding and saying, "Whatever you think is best." Claire managed it all. She was, after all, a project manager. She coordinated vendors, handled seating charts, managed family tensions on both sides. She did it methodically and without complaint, because she loved Joshua and she wanted this day to be right. What she did not fully see, what she could not see from the inside, was how much of the relationship she was also managing. Joshua's moods. His silences that stretched too long. The way he sometimes looked at her with something she couldn't name, something that felt like distance dressed up as affection. She told herself it was pre-wedding nerves. She told herself all couples went through friction before the ceremony. She told herself patience was a form of love. She was not wrong about patience. But she had not accounted for what happened when patience ran out of things to protect. The first sign came 6 weeks before the wedding, when Joshua cancelled 2 venue walkthroughs in a row without strong explanations. The second came when he stopped answering questions about the honeymoon details, deflecting with a lightness that had started to feel practiced. The third, the one Claire would replay in the weeks after, was at dinner 3 nights before the wedding, when Joshua had looked at her across the table and said, completely out of nowhere, "Do you ever wonder if we're doing this for the right reasons?" Claire had paused, fork halfway to her mouth. She had looked at him carefully. "What do you mean?" "Nothing," he said quickly. Too quickly. "Forget it. I'm just tired." She had let it go. She had added it to the quiet list of things she was not yet ready to examine. And then, the night before their wedding, Joshua Calloway had sent 11 words and disappeared. Claire did not sleep. She sat in the chair by the window and watched the city go from dark to grey to pale gold, and she thought about all the people who would arrive tomorrow, today, now, expecting a wedding. At 7 in the morning, she made calls. First to her older sister, Dana, who answered on the second ring and started crying before Claire had finished the first sentence. Then to the wedding coordinator, who was professional and kind and used the phrase "these things happen" in a way that managed to be both true and completely useless. Then to the venue. The florist. The caterer. One by one, the pieces of the life she had constructed were gently, formally dismantled. By 10 o'clock, the room was quiet again. Claire had $142 in her wallet. Her return flight to Portland wasn't for 3 more days. She had planned to be on a honeymoon by now. Her credit card had a small amount left on it, but the wedding expenses had been significant and she had been careful with her remaining balance. She packed slowly. She moved through the motions of someone who understood that falling apart was a luxury she couldn't afford yet, not completely, not in a hotel room in Denver with a flight 3 days out and nowhere immediate to go. She checked out of the Riverside Inn. The woman at the front desk recognized her. She had checked in the day before with a veil box and a garment bag, and said nothing, which was the kindest possible response. Claire walked out into the morning with her suitcase and her unanswered questions and the full, aching weight of a future that had evaporated overnight. She did not know yet that she was about to meet someone who would change the direction of everything. The corner of 5th and Larimer was not somewhere Claire would normally have paused. She had been walking without real purpose for 20 minutes, pulling her suitcase along the sidewalk, the thin October air cutting through her jacket in ways she hadn't dressed for. She had been trying to find a coffee shop, something open, something warm, somewhere she could sit without being asked to explain herself. She found the coffee shop. She also found, on the corner just before it, a man. He looked about 60. Grey stubble on his face. Sharp, careful eyes. The kind of guy who keeps to himself. He was sitting on an upside-down milk crate, leaning against the brick wall of a dry cleaner that had already closed. A paper cup was on the ground in front of him. He was not shouting, not holding a sign, not performing need. He was simply there, watching the street with an expression that was neither hopeful nor defeated. Just present. Claire walked past him. She made it 3 steps before she stopped. She did not know why she stopped. Later, she would try to explain it to her sister and fail to find words that felt adequate. Something about the quality of his stillness. Something about the way he hadn't tried to catch her eye. Something about the fact that, in this morning that had stripped everything familiar from her life, there was a man on a corner who appeared to have long since made peace with having nothing, and she was not sure she had ever seen anything so quietly dignified. She turned around. She opened her wallet. $142. She took out 60, more than she should have, she knew it as she did it, and walked back to him. Here, she said simply. He looked up at her. Dark brown eyes. Calm. Just taking her in. That's generous, he said. His voice was steady. Careful. Not what she expected. You look cold, Claire said. It was not the whole reason, but it was a true part of it. He accepted the money with both hands, which was a gesture she hadn't anticipated, careful, deliberate. Thank you, he said. Sit down if you'd like. The sun hits this wall well around now. It was such an odd thing to say. An invitation from someone who had nothing to invite her to. Claire found herself setting her suitcase upright and sitting down on the curb beside him. She didn't know his name yet. She didn't ask immediately. They sat for a while in the thin October sunlight, watching taxis and pedestrians move through the city, and Claire felt something in her chest loosen just slightly, the particular relief of being in the company of someone who was making no demands on her whatsoever. Bad morning, he said eventually. The worst of my life, Claire said, and was surprised by how easily it came out. My wedding was supposed to be today. My fiancé cancelled it last night. The man was quiet for a moment. Not the silence of someone searching for the right thing to say. The silence of someone actually thinking. I'm sorry, he said at last. That kind of loss is not small. No, Claire agreed. It isn't. What was his name? Joshua. The man nodded slowly. And what will you do today, Claire? She blinked. She hadn't told him her name. She opened her mouth to point that out and then closed it, because he was looking at her with such complete, unhurried attention that the question seemed more important than the mystery. I don't know, she said honestly. I don't have a plan. That's a good place to start, the man said. She looked at him. That's a strange thing to say. Plans can be rebuilt, he replied. But first you have to know which ones were ever really yours. Claire stared at him. Something in the sentence rearranged itself in her chest. She didn't respond. They sat a while longer. Then she stood, reclaimed her suitcase, and thanked him. William, he said, when she was 3 steps away. She turned back. My name, he said simply. William Cross. Claire nodded. Thank you, William. She walked toward the coffee shop. And she thought, for the first time since reading Joshua's message the night before, about something other than what she had lost. Claire spent 2 more days in Denver. She changed her flight, trading her honeymoon return for an economy seat back to Portland, and used the hotel points she'd accumulated over years of work travel to stay in a modest room near the airport. She did not spend those days lying in bed. She was surprised by this. She had assumed grief would be immobilizing. Instead, she found it clarifying. She sat with her laptop and really looked, at the decision she had made in the 3 years with Joshua. The apartment she had given up. The promotion she had turned down because the new role would have required travel that conflicted with their plans. The friendships she had let thin out because Joshua preferred small gatherings and she had quietly calibrated her social world to match his comfort. None of these things had been demanded of her. That was the hardest part. Joshua had never explicitly asked her to shrink. He had simply occupied so much of her attention, his needs, his preferences, his rhythms, that she had gradually become less visible to herself. She thought about William Cross and his odd, precise sentences. Plans can be rebuilt. But first you have to know which ones were ever really yours. On her second day in Denver, almost without making a decision about it, Claire found herself walking back to Fifth and Larimer. William was there. Same milk crate, same wall, same quality of stillness. He looked up when she approached and said, "You came back. I wanted to return this." She held out $20, all she could really spare. "You didn't need to give me your name yesterday." It mattered. William regarded the money, then her. "Keep it," he said. "You have further to go than I do." "That might be the saddest thing I've ever heard," Claire said. "It's not sad," he replied calmly. "I know exactly where I am. That's more than most people can say." She sat down again. The October sun was warmer today, the light falling clean and gold against the brick. "How long have you been here?" Claire asked. "In this city." "On this corner." "On this corner, about 4 months," William said. "In this city, much longer." "Do you have family here?" A brief pause. "I have people who know me." It was not quite an answer, and they both knew it, and William did not seem troubled by her noticing. He had a way of occupying ambiguity without discomfort that Claire found simultaneously reassuring and unsettling. "You knew my name yesterday," she said. "I hadn't told you." William smiled, the first full smile she had seen from him, and it changed his face entirely. There were years behind it, and something that might have been amusement. "You had a name tag from the hotel still clipped to your bag," he said. Claire looked down at her tote. The Riverside Inn lanyard was still attached to the zipper. She laughed, actually laughed, for the first time in 36 hours. "I've been walking around with that all day." "You had other things on your mind," William said. The laugh faded. Claire finally looked at him for real. His hands were careful. The way he spoke was exact. And he kept glancing at the street, not nervous, just paying attention, like someone used to taking things in quickly. "You're not," she stopped herself. "Not what?" William asked. "I was going to say you're not what you appear to be." But that seemed rude. "It's accurate," he said simply. "Most people aren't." They sat for another hour. William asked her questions, not about Joshua, not about the wedding, but about her work, her city, what she was good at, what she wished she'd had more time for. The questions were precise and interested, and they made Claire realize how seldom anyone had asked her those particular things in the last 3 years. She left before dark. She thanked him again. He nodded once, in that particular way of his that felt like acknowledgement rather than farewell. On the flight back to Portland, Claire Ashford sat by the window and thought about the difference between a life that was built around someone else and a life that was built for yourself. She did not yet know who William Cross was. She did not know that his presence on that corner was not what it appeared to be, or that the man she had given $60 to on the worst morning of her life controlled more resources than she could have imagined. She only knew that in 2 brief conversations with a stranger on a sidewalk, she had felt more genuinely seen than she had in 3 years of a relationship she had planned a wedding around. That was either comforting or devastating, depending on how you looked at it. Claire decided to look at it as information. The first month back in Portland was hard in ways Claire had expected and hard in ways she hadn't. The expected difficulty was the practical landscape. She had given up her apartment, her former landlord had re-rented it. She stayed with her friend Renata for 3 weeks while she found a new place, a smaller apartment than before, in a neighborhood she hadn't lived in, which turned out to suit her. The hardest part turned out to be the people. Once the wedding got called off, everyone somehow heard about it. The story kept changing depending on who was telling it. Some people tried to be nice but said the wrong thing. Others weren't so careful. One co-worker pulled her aside and told her the partners were wondering if she was in the right headspace for a project she'd been waiting on for months. She understood what that meant. So Claire asked for a meeting. She sat down across from the two senior partners, both in their 50s, trying to act supportive while also talking down to her a little. And she said this: "My personal life got messy for a bit. My work didn't. Judge me on the work. They did. She got the project and finished it early, under budget. She wasn't trying to look strong. She was figuring out how to actually be strong. That's different, and she could feel it. She kept thinking about William Cross. Not sure why. Something about the way he talked stuck with her. His words would pop back into her head at random times. She had no way to reach him. Didn't take his number. Didn't even think about it then. Later, she'd realize how strange that was. You can talk to someone twice and it shifts something in you. Then they're just gone. Or so she thought. For months after Denver, Claire was at her desk looking over drawings when her assistant knocked. Said there was a call for her. Personal line. A man named Alan Mercer. Said she wouldn't know him, but William Cross told him to call. Claire looked at the phone for a second. Put him through. Alan Mercer sounded calm. Straight to the point. Said he worked with a private investment group out of Denver and Chicago. Said Mr. Cross asked him to reach out. There was a project starting up. Mixed use. Part of it would be affordable housing. They were looking for someone to lead it. Someone with architecture and coordination experience. Claire paused. Are you offering me a job? It's more of a conversation, Alan said. Could turn into an offer. Mr. Cross thought you'd be a good fit. No pressure. Just wanted to open the door. Claire was quiet for a moment. How does Mr. Cross know my work? He made inquiries after you met, Alan said. Your professional record is strong. I see. Another pause. Can I ask, what does Mr. Cross actually do? I mean, professionally. There was a brief hesitation on the other end of the line. The full answer to that question, Alan said carefully, is something that might be better addressed directly with him. He's asked if you'd be willing to meet again. In Denver, or another city if you prefer. Claire leaned back in her chair and looked at the ceiling for a moment. Tell him Portland, she said. And tell him I'll want straight answers. I'll let him know, Alan said. And she could hear in his voice something that sounded, faintly and professionally suppressed, like relief. William Cross arrived in Portland on a Thursday in February, on a morning when the city was doing what Portland does in February, rain, grey, stubborn beauty underneath it all. He was not wearing the worn jacket from the corner of 5th and Larimer. He was wearing a dark grey overcoat, clean and well cut. He looked, in a word, different, and also, in a more important way, exactly the same. The eyes were the same. The stillness was the same. The quality of his attention had not changed. They met at a coffee shop near Claire's office that she had chosen specifically because it was on her ground. You look well, William said. You look like someone who owns things, Claire replied. He smiled. That's fair. She waited. She had decided she would not fill silences today. William ordered coffee, wrapped both hands around the cup, and began to talk. His name was William Cross. That part had always been true. He was 63 years old. He had grown up in rural Kentucky, the son of a coal worker and a woman who taught piano lessons out of their living room. He had left at 18 with very little and arrived in Chicago at 22 with a small amount more. He had spent 15 years building a construction company from a two-man operation into a regional firm. He had spent the 15 years after that turning that firm into Cross Development Group, a privately held real estate and infrastructure development company with a portfolio spanning 7 states and several international projects. He had, at the time Claire met him on the corner of 5th and Larimer, a net worth that she would later learn was in the neighborhood of $800 million. Claire listened without interrupting. When he finished, she set down her coffee cup. "Why?" she said. "Why was I on that corner?" "Yes." William was quiet for a moment. "My company has a significant affordable housing initiative," he said at last. "We've been developing mixed-income communities in cities where the gap between what people earn and what housing costs has become genuinely catastrophic. Denver was one of our development sites." He paused. "I have a practice. It began as an experiment and became something I return to, of spending time in the neighborhoods where we build. Not in meetings. Not in site walkthroughs. Just present. Watching. Trying to understand what people actually experience on those streets, rather than what our data tells us they experience." "So you were researching?" "I was listening," he said. "There's a difference." Claire thought about that. "And the disguise?" "The cup on the ground." "I wasn't hiding what I was," William said. "I was removing the signal. People respond to apparent wealth, apparent poverty, apparent status in ways that are very consistent and very limiting. I wanted to see the street without the signal." "And I gave you $60, Claire said. "Yes." "Out of 142. "Yes." He paused. "That mattered to me. Not because of the money. Because of what it said about who you were when you had every reason to only be thinking about yourself." Claire looked at him for a long time. "I'm not sure I like being studied." "You weren't being studied," William said. "I noticed you. There's a difference." He set down his cup. "I want to be completely honest with you about why I asked Alan to call. The project is real. The role is real. The offer, if we get there, is real. But I also wanted to see how you were. After Denver. I felt a responsibility for that, having, as you correctly identified, not been what I appeared." "Do you feel that responsibility often?" Claire asked. "Less often than I should," William said. "I'm working on it." Silence settled between them. It was not uncomfortable. It was the particular silence of two people recalibrating. "What happened to your fiancé?" William asked. "If you're willing." "Joshua." Claire turned her coffee cup on the saucer. "He emailed me 3 weeks after the cancellation. He said he had been offered a position in London and had known about it for 4 months and hadn't told me because he wasn't sure how to handle it. He said he thought he might love me, but that he also thought he had been using our engagement as an anchor against making a decision he needed to make for himself." She paused. "He apologized. Sincerely, I think. I don't believe he's a bad person. I believe he was dishonest in the way that people are dishonest when they haven't learned to be brave enough for the truth." "And did you forgive him?" "Eventually. Not for him. Because carrying it was weight I had other uses for." William nodded slowly. "That's a very clear-eyed way to arrive at forgiveness." "I had good company while I was working it out," Claire said, meeting his eyes. "Even if the company didn't give me the full picture." William accepted the quiet reproach. "I'm sorry for that." "I know," Claire said. "That's why we're having this conversation." The meeting in Portland lasted 3 hours. By the end of it, Claire had agreed to a second meeting to discuss the Denver project formally. She drove home through the February rain, and she sat in her car outside her apartment for a few minutes before going inside, not because she was overwhelmed, but because she wanted to let the afternoon land properly. She had liked William cross on a sidewalk in October with $60 in her hand. She liked him still, sitting across from her in a coffee shop in February knowing the full weight of what he was. There was something in him that remained consistent across those two very different contexts, the quality of his attention, the precision of his language, the way he listened as if he intended to actually use what he heard. She was not naive. She understood that wealth at that scale came with complexity she had not yet encountered. She understood that a man who spent time on street corners observing his own development sites was a man with a particular relationship to control. She understood that there were things she did not yet know. But she had spent 3 years in a relationship with a man who never once asked her what her work meant to her, what she was building toward, what she wished she'd had more room for. She had spent those 3 years gradually disappearing from her own life. She would not do that again. She was certain of this. She went inside and called her sister Dana. "He's a billionaire real estate developer," she said, without preamble. There was a long pause. "The man from the corner," Dana said. "The man from the corner." Another pause. "Claire." "I know." He was sitting on a milk crate. He was researching his development sites. "That's either the most eccentric thing I've ever heard," Dana said slowly, "or a story someone made up to sound interesting." "It's true," Claire said. "I checked. Cross Development Group. He's been building affordable housing initiatives for 15 years. His Wikipedia page has a photograph. He looks exactly like himself." A very long pause. "And you gave him $60. "I did. Out of 142. "I know, Dana." "Claire." Her sister's voice had shifted into something softer, more careful. "How do you feel?" Claire sat down on her couch. She thought about the question honestly, the way William had taught her, just by modeling it, just by occupying honesty so consistently that it became the natural register for anyone in his company. "Careful," she said finally. "And curious. And not willing to make any decisions from fear." "That sounds healthy," Dana said. "I think so," Claire agreed. "I think that's what healthy actually feels like. It's less exciting than I expected." Dana laughed. And Claire laughed too, for the second time since October, easy and genuine and not borrowed from anywhere. The world had a way of sorting itself, Claire was learning. Not dramatically. Not with announcements. Just steadily, the way rivers move toward the sea, without hurry, without detour, without anyone's permission. She heard about Joshua Calloway through a mutual friend, 6 months after the cancelled wedding. He had taken the London position. He had stayed for 8 months. He had come back to Denver having discovered, apparently, that running from one life didn't automatically deliver you to a better one. He was, by all accounts, doing fine, but quieter. Changed in the way that people are changed by learning things they should have learned less expensively. Claire felt no satisfaction in this. She felt, if anything, the mild warmth of witnessing someone begin to grow in the direction of honesty. It was not her business. But it was not nothing. Joshua's mother called once. Claire answered. The woman said, stiffly and with the particular dignity of someone performing an action against their nature, that she had been unkind in the weeks after the cancelled wedding. That she had taken Joshua's side reflexively, as mothers do. That some of the things she had said, about Claire not being right for him, about the relationship being unbalanced, were not things she had actually believed but things she had said to make herself feel better about her son's choices. Claire listened without filling in the silences. I appreciate you calling, she said, when the woman had finished. You didn't have to. I know, the woman said. I wanted to. I'm well, Claire said. I'm building something I care about. I'm glad, the woman said. And she sounded, genuinely, like she meant it. Claire hung up the phone and stood in her kitchen for a moment. The morning light was coming through the window at an angle she particularly liked. She made herself coffee. She went to her desk. She had work to do. The Denver project took 14 months to complete its initial phase. Claire led it. Not from behind anyone, from the center. She managed contractors, coordinated community input sessions, handled the design firm interfaces and the city permit timelines and the inevitable small crises that accumulate on any project of that scale. She also got to know William Cross over those 14 months, in the particular way you get to know someone when you are working alongside them rather than auditioning for them. He was demanding, she discovered. He had high standards for execution and low tolerance for imprecision. He also listened to pushback, really listened, adjusted when the argument was sound, explained his reasoning when he held firm. There were some tense moments. They didn't always agree on priorities, deadlines, even a design detail Claire cared about that William wasn't sold on at first. Claire didn't back off. She explained her thinking and backed it up. If she lost the argument, she said so and moved on. If she won, she didn't make a big deal out of it. Later she realized that was exactly what William wanted from the start. She didn't fall for him overnight. It happened slowly. Just two people getting to know each other, seeing things clearly. One night in Denver, after the first building opened, they had dinner together. William asked her a simple question, what she actually wanted out of life. Claire told him straight. No softening it. No guessing what he wanted to hear. He listened the whole time. When she finished, he said, I want a lot of the same things. Only difference is I'm 63 and I've already learned a lot of my lessons the hard way. So I might be less exciting than I sound. Claire laughed. You're interesting enough. He nodded, then added carefully, there's also a big gap between us. Money. Age. Experience. I don't want that to turn into something you feel you have to work around. Then we just talk about it, Claire said. And fix things if they start getting weird. That's what I was hoping you'd say. That's what I would have said back in October, she said. If you'd asked. He smiled. I know. That's why I remembered you. 14 months after the day she first showed up in Denver with a suitcase and no real plan, Claire stood outside a building she helped bring to life. 6 stories. Mixed income housing. A year earlier the lot had just been dirt and a fence. Now it had 112 apartments. Most of them affordable. Exactly the kind of project the city had been asking for years. They did a small ceremony. Nothing fancy. William thanked the team one by one. When he said Claire's name, he said it the same way he said everyone else's. No spotlight. She liked that. Afterward they stood off to the side watching people walk into their new homes. Claire said, you know I almost didn't stop that day. I figured, William said. I had $60 and a cancelled wedding. And you stopped anyway. A kid ran across the courtyard testing the space like it was a playground. Claire watched him and said, honestly, I didn't stop because I'm generous. I stopped because you weren't asking. That makes a difference. William thought about that. I spent years on those street corners trying to understand people, he said. I told myself it was research. He paused. But part of it was wanting to see who people really were before they had a reason to impress anyone. And what did you learn? That most people are better than they think, he said. And the ones who give without expecting anything usually already know who they are. Claire looked at him. That sounds like something you'd only say to someone you trust. It is. Standing there in the cold November light, Claire thought about the worst morning of her life. Sitting on a curb with almost nothing left and no plan. No one rescued her. She just kept going. That's really what changed everything. She had been left the night before her wedding. The plans, the apartment, the future she thought she had, gone. And with barely any money and nowhere clear to go, she still stopped for a stranger. Not because it would help her. Not because she expected anything back. She just did. William, at that moment, was just a man sitting on a crate watching people walk by. And Claire treated him like any other person. That's really the whole point of the story. Joshua wasn't some villain. He was someone who avoided being honest and paid for it later. William wasn't running a test either. He was a man who'd spent years building things for people and had forgotten what normal life felt like. And Claire wasn't saved by money or luck. She just made a choice that morning. A small one. Move forward with some self-respect instead of shutting down. That one decision ended up changing a lot. That's usually how these things start. Not with something dramatic. Just a quiet choice. If this story stayed with you, if Claire's journey, or William's question on that corner, or the particular quality of starting over with honesty instead of performance spoke to something in your own life, we want to hear from you. Leave a comment. Tell us where you're watching from. Tell us about a moment when you stopped for someone, or when someone stopped for you. And if you haven't subscribed yet, now is the time. These are the stories that matter. We'll see you in the next one.